Welcome to another edition of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table, as always, we have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla, and we have our digital media contributor, Susanna Ware, here as well as we get ready for Thursday night football. You know, we like some sound effects. What you got?
Well, the people in the YouTube comments didn't like the sound effects.
That you made or in general?
I think in general.
In general.
They said we didn't need the air horn. But you're right, it is a big game.
So
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Broncos can clinch a playoff berth.
Let's say that again.
The Broncos can clinch a playoff berth.
We love to hear that because it is a big game in prime time. And again, I quoted head coach Sean Payton, it's better to be flexed in than to be flexed out. And this game, you didn't realize at this point in the season how important this matchup was going to be. Obviously, division games are important, but when you look at the implications of this game in particular, it's going to be really exciting to travel to LA and to watch this team play because it's one of those games that, you know, they have a lot of time to clinch a playoff spot, but you really want to clinch that spot to get that out the way and then kind of focus on the seeding. So how excited are you guys for this Thursday night matchup? Suze, we're going to start with you on this special.
I didn't approve of
this. Special edition. Suze, let me know your thoughts.
I'm excited. Big game. Third primetime game of the year.
Ooh.
Lights are bright.
That's right.
I can't wait.
What you got?
She took everything I was going to say. No, I think that you're right, Elisa. This game at the beginning of the year, maybe you didn't think it was going to be as meaningful as it is. The Broncos and Chargers were both in similar spots, right, where people thought they were going to be rebuilding. This was a Chargers team that hired a new head coach, and people thought, okay, maybe they're going to take a year or two here to get going, but obviously they're right in the mix. They're the 7 seed currently. The Broncos are the 6 seed currently. And I think you're spot on with, hey, you've got a chance to clinch a playoff berth. Don't let this linger to week 17 against Cincinnati or week 18 against the Chiefs where slowly the pressure ramps up to win a football game.
Yeah.
Go get it now on a short week against a division rival, clinch your first playoff berth since Super Bowl 50. Man, if you could do that at SoFi and do it against a division rival, that would make it even sweeter. Have the long weekend to celebrate the win. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a challenge. I think in a lot of ways the Chargers and Broncos want to do similar things. They're built similarly in terms of they want to run the ball. They want to play really good defense. They're both tied with the Eagles atop the NFL in scoring defense. They've all allowed exactly the same number of points, which is kind of crazy through 15 weeks. But they want to play good defense. They want to run the ball. They want their quarterbacks to make plays when they need to and not turn the ball over. And you saw it in week, 6 here in Denver, right? Like this was the Chargers jumped out to a big lead and then the Broncos crawled back into it. They almost had a chance to get back into that game. And surely the Broncos want to get revenge, but the Chargers, they just lost a big game to Tampa at home, so they're going to want to get back to. So it's a big game, and to be able to clinch a playoff berth, like this is what it's all about. As guys have said over and over, this is why you play the game. And the Broncos have a chance in prime time to show the country what they're about and to go ahead and clinch that playoff berth. And like you said, 6 seed is up for grabs here. We'll talk more about that, but this is a big game.
Yeah, I think for the Chargers, you look at that Bucs game, and it's almost like the game that got away. And now there's more pressure as you go into this matchup against the Denver Broncos. And another crucial part of this game is like just like the Colts were fighting for their season. Now the Chargers are kind of in that position of wanting to not lose 2 games in a row. The Broncos are obviously surging right now. But there's a lot of things that they want to fix. The team has spoke about it. Head coach Sean Payton has spoke about it, about the importance of not overlooking, not overstepping week by week. This like one step at a time mentality, because if you go too fast, you might trip, and that's not what they want. And you said it perfectly. You don't want this to linger. You don't want to let this opportunity slip away if there is a chance, especially, again, to do it at SoFi Stadium, because Broncos country travels very well, especially in those Los Angeles games.
Yeah, and I think that, and we'll dive into some of like why this is the case, but I would expect this to be a close game. The Broncos and Chargers have played a lot of close games, as you expect with division opponents. It's going to be, again, a tough game, but when you look down the stretch, you're going to Cincinnati where Joe Burrow is playing out of his mind, and obviously we saw the Broncos pass defense take a step forward against Anthony Richardson, but it was a tough game against Jameis Winston, and so I think anytime you play Joe Burrow, that's a Bengals team that is dangerous. And then, who knows what's going on with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but it looks less likely like they'll be resting starters in Week 18. And so these are all tough games, and it feels like like you said, and we're kind of harping on this, but I think for good reason. You don't want to go into week 17 being like, okay, now we've got to win one of two, or go into week 18 being like, now we've got to win this one, and kind of let things creep back in. I would say, just for people at home, because there's a little bit of confusion or misinformation maybe on Twitter, the clinch scenarios for the Broncos, and we'll have this on our website, denverbroncos.com.
Drop the bar.
Ding! If you want to go take a look at that. But the Broncos can clinch a playoff berth with either a win or a tie in their last 3 games, any of their last 3 games, or a loss or a tie from the Bengals, Dolphins, and Colts over these last 3 weeks. So all 3 of those teams would need to either lose again or have the Broncos win one of their games. So I saw a tweet that said if the Dolphins and Bengals lose, that's it. Not true. The Colts also need to either lose or tie. So, again, it's possible the Broncos could get in this weekend anyway, even if they're not successful at SoFi, but you don't want to worry about that. This whole season, you've put things, like, you've had control of your own destiny. Keep it that way. And, again, like I said on Monday, yesterday, we're at the point now where, like, this team is 9-5. I think they've proven that we should just consider them to be a good football team and a playoff football team. And playoff football teams, I think, can win this sort of game. And so it'll be exciting to watch, a big game for sure. But again, I think it's more likely the Broncos go win 2 or 3 of these next 3 as opposed to the other way around. So excited, and man, it would be sweet to just celebrate a playoff berth in your division rivals visiting locker room.
Yeah, I think these are the games that everyone wants to see, and it's like, get your popcorn ready. And I think this team is really ready. And Suze, I just think just being around the players after the game, they're aware, like, ooh, like, we've been blessed by the football gods a little bit, but like, they're focused on this short week and handling business on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Chris Abrams-Drain, who got his first start last week, talking to him after the game, he was like, yeah, like, this was great. It was a great way to get my first start, get this win, but we're already moving on. Like, we got a short week, and we've got a great opportunity here, and like, so the focus immediately flipped, I think. And better to do that coming off of a win where you have an opportunity to really take matters into your own hands here. But yeah, I think the focus definitely switched very quickly.
Well, it's all about, again, just like you said, staying in control, staying in the driver's seat. Are you okay?
Yeah, I turned to sneeze, but I turned toward the camera. Apologies to the people watching.
Like, if you're listening to this, it's always better to watch it on YouTube just for Eric's facial expressions and for the comments.
And for the color coordination you got going on.
The swag. I mean, it's cute. I like it.
Elisa, how was your recent visit to the team store?
Why are you putting me on blast that I went to the team store?
I'm not putting you on blast. I'm just asking. I care about how you're doing, so I wondered, how was your recent visit to the team store?
I wore my new hat on Monday's episode of Altitude Advantage, because I went with the whole beige look, because I wanted a beige on beige hat. And which
I, of course, noticed.
And then I wore pink today, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have a pink Broncos hat.
What was the damage of the team store?
So these comments, let's get to the comments. This is what the fans
want. It's bad when you got a 40% discount and it's still not, you still can't share it.
Hey, it's Christmas time.
That's true.
I had to get Christmas presents. I had to get, Christmas presents for me. It's a lot. Of course, yeah. It's a lot. So, But hey, I do it for Broncos Country and for the Altitude Advantage podcast, so I can rock, stuff on here. And then it invites other fans to go to the team store. See? I do it for the club.
Use promo code Elisa at the cash register for I'm just kidding.
I wish. They're going to be like, no. All right, so comments. I hear we got a couple good ones lined up as we look into this short week Tuesday podcast. Eric, what we got?
Let's do it. Let's start with last week's episode, reacting to Garrett Bowles' extension, because there were some good 38 total comments.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a nice number.
That's a lot. Bob Ferris
actually
says, Broncos fan since 1961. The former Broncos player I would add to this team is a toss-up for me. Defense, Steve Atwater. Offense, Shannon Sharp. Given our current defense, Sharp by a hair. Okay, that's not really what we did on the podcast, but that's good to know. Thank you, Bob, for your comment. I agree that though Troutman and Adkins went out there and were like, Shannon Sharp, who? It was like National Tight End Day again against
all over again
against the Colts.
That's right.
Lone Voice 7935 says Bowles is a great Broncos story. Quentin Caldwell says Bowles is completely loyal. Garrett is a real one. I agree. He's been through it here and came out the other side, it looks like, and so that's exciting. Rocky Suds Detailing, an old friend of the show, hasn't showed up in a while.
Okay.
Suze,
Hello,
if you need
friend.
your Mercedes cleaned up, you can go to Rocky Suds.
Yes,
Mercedes, not a sponsor. I'm on Eric's side. Yes, it's great news to get Bowles on board, but don't need the air horn racket. LOL. Okay, so
that was for you.
So Rocky Suds is your op for this week.
Come on, Rocky.
Lone Voice 7935. Nice to see Suze in the video.
Hey, wait, Suze, you gotta talk so you can be in the video.
Thank you for your comment. I appreciate it.
She always knows how to say just enough to pop up there. J. Prez Bronk. Eric is the QZ god. One can only wish they have that amount of QZs. Got another one on today. Thank you. Ryder West says, I'm going with Suze on Rudy. It's the... Which,
Thank you.
who would
Thank you.
have possibly thought anyone would have agreed with this?
Hold on. What's this commenter's name?
Ryder West 77.
Ryder West MVP. Thank you. Because I got a lot of hate for that.
No, it's spelled incorrectly. It's the emoji is a motorcycle, or the profile picture. Suze, your thoughts on motorcycles?
Do you like them? Would you get one?
Well, if Ryder West has one as his profile and he agrees with me, then sure.
Have you been on a motorcycle?
What?
Have you ever been on a motorcycle?
What is it? I don't know. I think so.
That's not something that you don't know.
Well, I
think he's just declining to respond.
No, I don't know. I like know people that have had, like, it's possible as a kid, like, people had dirt bikes, you know, like the Yamaha, like, dirt bike. Like, if that counts, then maybe. I don't think I've ever been on, like, a Harley. Not a sponsor. Maybe it is. I don't know. Sponsorship is going to get after me. I don't know our official
Surface.
motor. Smart. Yep. I would, if I weren't riding a motorcycle, I'd be on my Microsoft Surface. Okay. Ryder West 77 says, I'm going with Suze on Rudy. It's the vibe of triumphing over adversity, and vibe is everything. I was a late bloomin' onion dog in school and always root for underdogs as an adult. It's not unlike how the Broncos reviewed at the start of this season.
There we go.
Love that we paid young Mr. Bowles. It's his story as well. Broncos country kept receipts. 5 wins. What? LFG.
That is an excellent comment.
Good comment.
Great analysis of my selection.
Okay. Praise Suze is basically the solution for a good comment. Okay. Sean L. 87 says, love the show, guys. Listen to it every chance a new one comes on my way to work. Been a fan for a long time. 1997 was the year, and little 10-year-old me fell in love with the game of football and the Broncos. Keep up the awesome content, guys. Let's go Broncos. Let's see what else. Oh, okay. Bulwark Tier, he or she commented. They commented on what the how to say tier, so I appreciate that. I'll probably forget next week. But for now, I'm with you on a Bonito jersey, Eric, with a K. Peyton calls them my Broncos earlier this week. Suze, don't feel pressured. You take your time. It will mean more when you're certain of your choice. Elisa, are you joining the Orange and Blue Nail Squad? There's a lot going on here. Cheers for the shout-out, guys. Honestly, this show is such an enjoyable time of the week. Tier is pronounced tier, sad face, Eric, but you say it how you want. I appreciate that.
And my nails were blue and orange to start the season. So, yes, I will join that. I will. Ooh, I already have ideas.
Robert Barlow, 1339. Will you guys be at the last home game? Is it possible to meet you guys? Love the show. Super fun and entertaining. Suze wanders the concourse before the game. So if you find her, send us a picture and we'll send
I will get you something from the team store
or something.
Yeah.
Paul Shatter, 4568. Skip to minute 22. Chit chat. That's Paul. Yeah. That's what it's a podcast. We're having fun. That's why there's time code. So if you don't want the chit chat, you can go to minute, probably for this one, 30. And J. Prez Bronk, I'll take Bobby Boucher from Waterboy. That's a good answer.
That's a good answer.
Dominique Jaramillo, an old friend of the show. I'm going Boobie Miles from Friday Night Lights. This team needs a running back like him. He got hurt. So, but a good movie. You guys a movie? Friday Night Lights movie or show?
I like the show. We're digestible. And
We're digestible. It's like 14 seasons.
That's why. But I can there's always different things going on.
There is a lot going on. Are you a Dylan East or Dylan West fan? I'm in too deep?
You're in too deep.
Okay.
Don't look at me. You know I've seen neither, so.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say I like the movie here just to be different. Rex TVH. I didn't know you spelled your name differently. That's a detail I never noticed or picked up. My bad. You'll have to show how you spell a name. I don't think I've ever seen it spelled any other way than ERIC. I'm sure I'll be corrected here, but just wanted to let you know that it wasn't anything negative or intentional. Rex TVH, I forgive you. It is in the description, which is like 3 inches above where your comment is. But
also, we do have a little lower third that says Aric DiLalla.
That's true.
Lead round.
But listen. As long as it never happens again, it'll be fine. Okay, Team
This
Took.
is just from one episode too. We still got to look at.
We're having fun. Are you having fun?
No. I'm having a lot of fun. I always have fun on this podcast.
Okay. Team Took. Elisa, random question.
Oh, God.
Do you know how to make tamales, and do you make them around Christmas time? Tamales are my favorite. I wish I knew how to make them. How do you guys feel about homemade tamales?
I do make tamales, and we do them with banana leaves in my culture. So other cultures use corn leaves.
I was going to say, what is the other?
Yes,
Okay.
they use corn leaves, which makes it more like...
Not as good, apparently, in your mind.
Makes them different. And we use banana leaves in our Salvadorian culture. So, yeah, when I go home, I'm pretty sure I'll be part of the assembly line that makes tamales.
That's exciting. Can you make them for us for an episode?
I'll see if we have some. I think I can bring them back. I just have to freeze them.
I prefer them fresh if that's possible. We'll talk about it after.
You're asking for a lot. Have you ever made tamales?
Maybe after riding a motorcycle, but I'm not sure.
You rode your motorcycle to make tamales?
Yeah, exactly. And then I looked up the recipe on my Microsoft Surface. You Harris says, y'all have good takes. It's good y'all are more than just pretty faces. Thank you. I try to tell people that about me, and they don't often believe it, but it's true.
It's the hair.
All right. We're now finally on to the next episode. Team Took back again. Hey, Aric, talk about how much the 2 touchdowns help out Nick in the Defensive Player of the Year race. For example, Nick has 11.5 sacks, 71-yard pick six, 49-yard, I think it's 50 yards, fumble 6. How valuable are those scores compared to sacks? Good question. I think the highlights help, right? That people see Nick Bonito doing these crazy things. Those plays, the strip sacks, those I think help you from the narrative standpoint more than just a quote normal sack. And these awards are somewhat narrative based. You've got to have that.
You spoke about that.
The public opinion, like the support on your side. So again, I would love if Nick won or Pat Surtain won. I think Pat has like that name awareness maybe a little bit more than Nick, but if Nick keeps doing what he's doing, he scores a touchdown the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I like to see them keep it away from him.
I mean, the power of social media.
That's true.
Yeah. Make sure you guys vote for him in the Pro Bowl.
Tweet. Ooh. What is what do you think is the biggest power of social media?
I mean, there's a lot. Like you can become famous in 2 seconds for the right and wrong reasons.
Ooh.
Wow.
Wow. But, with Nick, I feel like a lot of people are, again, like a lot of people shared his highlight like from Monday night and then as well as the defensive touchdown because it wasn't a pick six. It was a fumble recovery.
That's true. They were, Team Took was on that.
Yeah.
They knew.
You made a face. What comment did you pass up?
Not reading it. J. Prez Bronx says, that's a clean QZ, Aric. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Who reads that one?
Eric getting a lot of love on the comment.
Monica says, thank you, Aric. That's what I've been preaching. Teams are looking out, thinking, here comes the Broncos. The opponents are worried to face us. Special teams, defense, and offense. The only thing that worries me is the run game, guys. Thoughts on our run game? Who is the hot hand? How can we improve? Thanks again for the love for the show. Yeah, I think the Broncos, that's our last comment there that I'm going to read. Please leave comments on the Broncos official YouTube page or leave a question. We'll answer it here right on the air. With the run game, I think they've got to, Sean Payton said, we've got to look better at the looks that we might get. We've got to be prepared for the looks that we're not sure we're going to get. And we've got to evaluate the whole thing because I do think it's fair that when you get into the playoffs, you're going to need a run game. You can't become one-dimensional.
Yeah.
You can't, for as good as Bo has been for most of the season, I think it's unfair to a rookie quarterback to expect them to go out and have to throw the ball like 45 times, right, to win a game. And so the more balance you have, if you can, especially like say you go play the Bills or maybe the Ravens beat the Steelers this week and they jump back up in that division, like you've got to control the clock against some of these really powerful offenses. You can't leave your defense out there a bunch of times and expect them to just get stop after stop, no matter how good they've played. And the run game is part of that, right? Like, I don't know how many Broncos fans caught the Steelers-Eagles game, but the Eagles had a drive at the end of the game that was 21 plays and 10 and a half minutes to end the game, and they took over that game. And there's something there about like being able to enforce and impose your will on other teams that if the Broncos can get back to running the ball, because they've done it at times, right? Like you saw it against the Saints. Trying to remember off the top of my head, like some of the other games where they ran the ball really well. But there's been times this year where they've done that. They've just got to find a way to get back to it.
Yeah, I think when you look at the way that you've seen other teams lose around the NFL when they can't control the clock very well or they can't sustain drives because their running game just isn't as effective. I feel like this team has really found strides here and there, but it's just about linking them together to actually sustain a long drive that you can kind of really pound the pavement, especially when trying to drive down the field.
Ooh,
but I
like
think
that, pound the pavement.
I'm just saying, I be dropping bars. But that's why I like and respect all of our running backs, but Aric Estime is one guy that I really like because they call him the mini bus because they said that he's like a mini Jerome Bettis, because he just kind of just bulldozes through guys. And sometimes you need that spark from this trio of these running backs because they're all different in different ways. Jalil's very elusive. He kind of just weaves in and out. You have Javonte Williams that kind of is like, has his nose to the ground, just kind of also bulldozes people. But it's just such a good combination of running backs that I said this on Monday's podcast, you're almost waiting for that part of this Broncos offense to unlock. And once that unlocks with this defense, the way that Bo's been playing and that run game and Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims from special teams, I mean, this team is very scary. Yeah,
and granted, they've still scored over 30 points in, 3 of the last 4 games. I know some of them came from defensive scores and that the offense is somewhere around like the 25 to 34, the 30-point mark for some of these games. But they're still scoring. It's not like they're being held to 10 points or 13 points. But I would say that like some of these games have come against, the Broncos have taken care. You can only play who you play, but the Broncos have taken care of business against some struggling teams like the Raiders, the Browns, the Colts, obviously. And so I think when you step up a notch in competition and you face, a Chiefs team or a Bills team or the Chargers this week, like that's where maybe you've seen the Broncos point totals. And granted, these games came a little bit earlier in the season, but the point totals were a little bit lower and the games become a little bit closer. And even if you're like, there's 4 minutes left in the game, you've got a lead. Can you run the ball well enough to put the game away and not punt it back to Justin Herbert and the Chargers, for example? We'll see what happens this week. Jaleel McLaughlin obviously listed on the injury report with a quad injury. We'll see kind of what his status is. Status for the game hasn't been announced as we're recording this, but it may be that you see more Aric Estime if Jaleel can't go in this game. And again, nothing's been announced there, but we'll see kind of how that develops throughout the week.
Yeah, and head coach Sean Payton had mentioned a couple weeks back where he said like our success is going to rely on the defense continuing to play well and the run game. Because I think he trusts what Nix and Sutton, Marvin Mims, all those guys can do. But to your point, I think he knows like the goals are how much higher this season. So the deeper that they're trying to go and the experience that Sean Payton has, he knows like we do have to get the run game going to really make it far in the AFC playoff race. So looking at the AFC playoff race, just going to look, the winner of Thursday night's game at SoFi Stadium has the upper hand for the number 6 seed that likely would face the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are at 10-4, or the Baltimore Ravens at 9-5 in the first round of the playoffs. And the number 7 seed would likely have to do a road playoff game in Buffalo, where the Bills are 11-3 and have won 4 straight wild card games. So to your point, what we said to start the show, you do want to obviously clinch the playoff. That's a big milestone, et cetera. But now you're fighting for seeding and you're playing a little bit of a chess match with the matchups that you have.
Yeah, and all these teams that you're going to face in the playoffs are good. So sometimes I think, like, you climb up the seeds and, like, are you going to, like, you could go to Baltimore or Pittsburgh and they could, be on fire that day, or you could go to Houston and they could play their best game of the season. Like all these matchups are going to be tough. And so sometimes you wonder, like you see teams kind of, maybe they sit their starters so they can get a certain matchup. You see it more with like NBA teams or NHL teams sometimes, where it's like they're trying to get a certain matchup. And it's just, to some degree, it's like, be careful what you wish for, because all these teams are good, right? But I do think there's something to be said for, hey, can you keep moving up? Because say you go to Buffalo and beat Buffalo, well, then the 7 seed is going to go to Kansas City, right? And so if you're the 7 seed, you're basically guaranteeing the toughest possible path to the Super Bowl.
That's a good point.
Whereas if you move up to the 5 seed, for example, which you basically need to win this game against the Chargers to keep your chances realistic for that, then can you get up to the 5 seed? Say you go to Houston and you win that game. Well, maybe there's upsets around the league, and it hasn't happened in a long time, but as far as I remember, but it's not out of the possibility that if the 7 and 6 seed upset somebody, that you could end up hosting a playoff game at some point. I think back in 2006, I remember the Colts were they were a low seed, and they ended up, I think they won the division still, but they ended up hosting a playoff game when nobody expected them to. So you want to climb up as far as you can, I think, to set the path up well. And also, I think this team, the Broncos, I think need to, another thing we talk each week of what are you proving this week? And this is another opportunity, I think, to prove that in addition to beating up on the quote unquote bad teams, or the teams you're supposed to beat, the next 3 are against teams that are, even though the Bengals are,
it's still Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
Yeah, their record isn't great, but I think these 3 teams are all playoff caliber teams. And so it's what are you going to do against playoff caliber teams on the road these next 2 weeks? Can you give yourself confidence that, if you beat the Chargers and Bengals, I think you'd go into wherever you go, whether it's Pittsburgh or Buffalo, or, obviously we don't know what's going on with Mahomes. It's possible the Chiefs fall out of that 1 seed and the Bills get up there, and you go to Kansas City, right? So can you give yourself some confidence that, hey, we can go to one of these places and beat these teams, because we just did it the last 3 weeks. But certainly, just from a percentages standpoint, you've got to find a way to get this one, I think. Otherwise, the Chargers have that head-to-head against you, and so you'd have to find a way to jump a game ahead of them, and their schedule eases up over the next 2 weeks. I think they play the Patriots in New England, and then they play the Raiders. I'm not sure if that's at SoFi or if that's at Allegiant, but
Suze, want to double check that? Double check that.
But
schedule.
Their schedule gets a little easier. I will say that you mentioned it earlier. The Chargers are coming in. The Broncos, we mentioned their clinch scenarios. Chargers still need a couple things, and if they lose this one, they're in a little bit of trouble because
they give up season high 40 points to the Bucs.
Yeah, I think the clinch scenario is if the Dolphins were to win their last 3, and the Chargers were to lose 2 of their next 3. The Broncos need to win 1 of their next 3. The Chargers need to win 2 of the next 3. Obviously, twice as hard. So that works. Wow. Suze, your thoughts on the where they're playing?
My thoughts on where they're playing? Yeah. I don't really have any thoughts on it, but I have where they are playing. It's in Vegas. So there you go.
Perfect.
Thanks. Looking at the seeding right now, you have the Chiefs, obviously, number 1. They're 13-1. You have the Bills, number 2. Steelers 3. Texans 4. Ravens 5. The Broncos jumped up to that 6th seed due to just a series of events that happened on Sunday, with Miami losing, the Chargers losing.
A series of fortunate events.
Yes, series of fortunate events. And the playoff probability for the Broncos right now is 91%. The Ravens is 99%. The Chargers is 87%. And you look at who's chasing them, which is the Colts, Dolphins, and Bengals. Theirs have significantly dropped, given obviously the big losses that they had. So it's just a matter of continuing to stay in the driver's seat. And that's something that all the guys have preached once they realized that the playoff scenario started to become real. It was okay, no sudden movements. Let's just continue to stay what's got us here so far. And I think that's something that Adam Troutman had mentioned before, Mike McGlinchey, of just, we don't want something to happen of previous seasons where we let up a little bit, and then next thing you know, we're looking at other teams to guarantee us a spot.
Yeah. And I think you just read off the playoff standings. I think there could be some significant shakeup here over the next couple of weeks, just because you've got games coming up that are between all of these kind of powerhouse teams at the top, right? Like the Steelers and Ravens, they play this weekend. And so you could see the division flip there if the Ravens are able to. I think that game's in Pittsburgh. Suze, what are your thoughts on where that game is? And then the Chiefs play the Texans, right? But who knows if Patrick Mahomes is going to play? They're playing on Saturday. It's a short week. And so if he can't go and the Texans win, now all of a sudden Buffalo and Kansas City are back within a game. And then Kansas City, 4 days later, they play the Steelers on Christmas. And so if the Steelers win that game, maybe they jump up to back into the division lead, or maybe they push for the 2 seed. Maybe if the Chiefs win there, they're back in the 1. And Baltimore plays Houston next Wednesday. So there's going to be a lot of, movement at the top. Yeah. Currently, the Broncos obviously are slated to go to Pittsburgh in the wild card round. That would be tremendous from a storyline perspective, obviously, to have this team face Russell Wilson and the Steelers. But there's just so many moving parts that I'm not at this point concerned with, like, okay, this is what the matchup is going to be, or this is the probable. I think there's just too much, great by the NFL to have the foresight to schedule these 2 games on Saturday and then have those teams basically flip opponents on Wednesday. You've got 4 teams that are all in the top 5 in the wild card standings right now, and they're all going to play each other. They'll play 2 of those opponents over the next 10 days. And so
makes for exciting football, especially when you're at this point in the season where you're trying to figure out where you're going to land, where you're going to go. Susan, did we figure out where that game was?
Where did you think it was? Just want to know how to respond.
I think that game is in Baltimore.
Unfortunately, you're correct.
But so the Broncos are currently scheduled to be the 6th seed and face the Steelers. It's possible by next Friday, the Friday after Christmas, that the Broncos are the 5 seed and scheduled to face Houston, or they could be the 7 seed and scheduled to face Baltimore, right? This is all. It's possible that all of this changes.
There's a lot to be decided
very quickly. I do think the Bills, with their schedule, I know they play the Patriots twice, and then they play. Because I'm just a machine. Suze, what are your thoughts on what the Bills' final 3 games are? I know they play the Patriots twice, and
let's see if you can.
That's kind of crazy. They play the Patriots twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they also play. This is good podcasting.
Think it through. Just think it through.
Just think. Okay, that's smart. Do they also play the New York Jets?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Wow. It's tough to live like this.
Okay.
But so, I'd imagine the Bills will win their last 3 and finish at.
That's a good.
Would that be 14-3 that they finish at? They've got 3 losses right now. So
they beat because they beat the Lions.
Yeah. So if the Chiefs stumble here against Houston and Pittsburgh, or if Denver knocks them off, the Chiefs have a tough schedule to finish here with.
Do you know that one?
Yeah, it's Houston, Pittsburgh, Denver, and so if they stumble a little bit, you could be looking at Denver going back to Kansas City for round 1 of the playoffs. Well, I think that'd be fun.
I have opposite reaction to that. So,
what's your reaction?
I said, "Let's go."
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, you want it?
I'll take that.
Cold in Kansas City.
Okay, it's cold in Buffalo.
Freezing.
There's probably not going to be 3 feet of snow in Kansas City. There could be 3 feet of snow if you play in Buffalo in January.
When I covered Buffalo for the first time, it was snowing, and I was on the sideline, and someone came up to me and handed me chicken broth, and I was like, "What is this?" They were like, "It's so you don't die." I was like, "Thanks."
That was nice of them.
Yeah, I think they realized I was from California.
So a lot of movement still to come. This game on Thursday will have a big part of it. The game Saturday. And it's possible by the time we talk to everybody next that the Broncos could have a playoff spot, and they could be, are they they could be the 5 seed, right? Because I think if Baltimore loses in Kansas City, to the Steelers, the Broncos would jump them for the time being if they win in LA. So a lot still to be decided, but exciting stuff for Denver.
And like you said, but this is why it's important to put the game away that you need to put away, and why this primetime game is really important, because there's a lot of things you can't control. Right, but you want to control as much as you can, and obviously you can't guarantee a win. You can't guarantee a win on primetime, but you can try your best to try to secure that, because that will open up so many other things that you can't control, like other teams and what happens there and all those things. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. And I know you mentioned Saturday, and I know that there was an announcement on the game from the Bengals for next week that the Broncos are going to be playing.
Yeah, the Broncos will play at 4:30 Eastern, 2:30 Mountain next Saturday, December 28th. That game will be on NFL Network. It'll be on Denver 7 here locally in Denver, the ABC affiliate. Listen, there were 5 games that could have been put into 3 Saturday slots. I think what are the other ones that got announced? The Chargers at New England is the first game, and then I think Washington Atlanta got flexed to Sunday night, actually. What's the Saturday?
How do you feel about that, Susan?
What are your thoughts on the Saturday night game, Suze? But a good day of football.
Yeah. Well, also I think for the Broncos it works out well because they had this mini bye week before going into that Saturday game, because they could have switched things around if they were playing on Sundays. Like all those things kind of come into play.
And the Bengals were playing this Thursday.
That's right. They were.
And they would have had an extended period of time to get ready for that Saturday game. Now they're going to play Sunday, and they'll have a short week going into that Denver game. So the Broncos chose this, as we've talked about many times, because the league can't force a team to play 2 Thursday night road games. The Broncos wanted this because they knew the Chargers. Obviously, the Bengals are an unfamiliar opponent to some degree, so maybe you want a little bit more time to game plan for them. But yeah, you just had your bye week last week. Obviously, the Broncos got a little bit banged up against the Colts, more so than some of the other previous games we've seen. But the Chargers, their bye week was way back, I think, week 5. And so, Suze, your thoughts on when their bye week was?
Well,
just kidding. I don't care that much. Tell me about the Saturday game.
The Saturday games are Chargers at New England.
Yep, we said that.
I'm confirming. You're correct.
I didn't. Okay.
She's fact checking you.
Us at Bengals.
Okay.
And Cardinals at Rams.
Ooh, that's kind of spicy because the Rams are now in the lead in that division. Cardinals kind of need a win to keep their season alive. That's a good one.
And you were correct about the Sunday night as well.
And you were incorrect about their bye week. It was week 5.
That's what I said.
It's week 4.
No, I didn't.
Nah, he said 5, unfortunately. As much as I'd love to back you up and have him be wrong.
Have him be wrong.
It's a big stretch, and the Broncos wanted this. We'll see if they can take advantage of kind of how they wanted this to play out.
Yeah, it's just, again, like as you look at this team from where they started to where they are now, one of my one of the things that I liked when we were in the locker room was one of the reporters said, like, oh, so much for a rebuilding year. And Jonathan Taylor just had a big smile on Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan
Taylor did not have a big smile.
I mean,
Jonathan Taylor was sad.
He was sad. But
Very
Jonathan
sad.
Cooper, he made me laugh because when they asked him about that play, and I'm going to go on a little tangent, he literally goes, yeah, shout out to Jonathan Taylor. And he just starts laughing. And then I think he realized, like,
that was
a little
crazy.
snarky.
It's crazy.
He was like, shout out to him. And they just started laughing. But Cooper, they told him, like, so much for a rebuilding year. And he just had this big smile on his face. And he's like, look, like, our coach said it early on. There is something dangerous about a young and hungry team. And when you look at how they started and all the things that were said when they started 0-2, to now be here and have 9 wins, have the opportunity to clinch a playoff spot, get 10 wins, I think it really shows a lot from how this team has grown, the resiliency, adversity, all those things. And when you just look at the lessons of the last couple of games, how do you see them learning from those things into this Chargers game? Because Justin Herbert, he didn't look great, obviously, in that game against the Bucs. He wasn't moving around the way he normally does, but everyone in that locker room acknowledges that he is a really good quarterback, and they have to be on their A game to not allow, a season high again in total yards like they did against the Cleveland Browns, or just starting out slow and hoping for the football gods to give you a gift like they did with Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, a lot there, Elisa. I think to start, you mentioned, hey, not a rebuilding year like people thought.
Yeah.
I remember Alex Singleton, and I think it was either in the offseason program or training camp, somebody asked him about this notion that it was going to be a rebuilding year, and he was like, I'm too old for it to be a rebuilding year.
Aren't we all?
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so it must have been training camp. And
Like, we all.
I remember...
I feel that.
Yeah, I'm too old too. And but I remember at the time being like, oh, it's like I like the attitude, but it might still be a rebuild. Like that might be how it is.
Yeah.
And credit to them for not letting that be the case. I think even when Sean Payton was talking about there's something dangerous about a young and hungry team, and especially after the 0-2 start, I thought, okay, well, maybe a young and hungry team, like for that group, maybe getting to 7 or 8 wins and just simply beating, like moving past the over-under, maybe that's like a good accomplishment. And that if you're the Broncos and you can say, hey, with a young core, with a rookie quarterback, we got to 8 wins or we got to 9 wins, that would be like a significant, and even after an 0-2 start, because at that point, you've got to go about 500, right, to even get to 7 wins. At that point, I was like, okay, well, if they can get to 7 or 8, like that would be a nice rebound from an 0-2 start. Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking about this as I was driving into work this morning. Why is that funny, Suze?
I didn't laugh.
Yeah, you did.
She's like, that's what you think about on your way to work.
Continue.
Okay. Well, for Suze's enjoyment and general analysis, I was driving in, I was thinking, hey, we're now thinking about, okay, well, are the Broncos going to be able to clinch this week, or are they going to have to wait till next week? Like are they going to be able to get to the 6th seed, or are they going to be stuck at the 7th seed if they get in? And I was like, I think we need to take a moment and just recognize like how nice it is to be covering a team that's 9-5 and has exceeded all expectations. And that if you told me back in August, you're going to be sitting there the week before Christmas covering a team that is 1 win away, can clinch a playoff spot with 1 win in the final 3 weeks, you'd be sprinting to take that opportunity. And so what a credit to these guys, what a testament to these guys for what they've been able to do. And we've talked a lot about that at this point. We should now kind of count on them and believe in them to win these games. But I also think like, let's just acknowledge what they've done to get to this point. So I think that stands out in terms of what you were talking about. Now you're right. They've got to take some lessons from these last few games, because it's probably not going to be good enough against the Chargers or the Bengals or the Chiefs to throw 3 interceptions or give up 2 scores to start the game, or even Broncos obviously got lucky on that Jonathan Taylor play, like let a team take a 2-score lead in the second half. You might not be able to get away with that against better teams. And so while it's good that the Broncos have won 4 games in a row, I don't think we've seen their best football since week 12 against the Falcons. Like I don't think we've seen their best football since that point. And so it's encouraging that you can still win without playing your best football, but it's also time to get back to your best football down the stretch. The playoffs, late in the regular season, it's all about who can get hot and find their stride at the right time. You don't want to peak too early, and I don't think the Broncos have done that, but now is the time to find your best, your A game. Sean Payton always talks about like chasing that perfect performance and how you never quite get it, but this is a time of year you'd rather be closer to perfect than the other way. Yeah. And so there's some lessons I think the Broncos can learn from their last game against the Chargers, but you're right that they've got to be better to win this football game.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you mentioned in yesterday's podcast about Bo Nix was him just kind of having that mental adversity and toughness to, like, as a rookie, you are when you're like, wow, like these are like 3 drives that I've had that I've thrown interception. Is every pass I'm gonna throw interception? That causes you to have some kind of, it loses some of your confidence there, which we haven't seen that from Bo, because I feel like most of the time his confidence just really can't be shaken. And to see him bounce back from that, it's just like, those are the growing pains that we've talked about. And it's something that we've seen him kind of battle through a lot, but that's more of the mental side of the game, of understanding like, okay, I have to have a short memory and just not focus on that. And for him to learn that in an environment at home, obviously go on to win that game, I think it's beneficial as you go into this Chargers game, because for all we know that could happen, or there could be some turnovers there, but now he has that mental lesson in his mind to be like, okay, we can get past this and I can connect for 2 late fourth quarter touchdowns to really, put the game away.
Yeah. Suze, what do you think of how Bo responded in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it yesterday, but I think he's always just kept a very mature perspective, a very even-keeled perspective, where he's like, yeah, this happens. Like, it happens to some of the best players, and so that doesn't mean that I'm going to, shy away from my next opportunity to go out there and still do what I need to do to get the job done. And I think we've seen that throughout the season, maybe not in such a dramatic fashion as this game, but, I think and even just the way he speaks after the game, you can tell, like, he knows it's not his best effort, but he's not going to let that, set him back and beat him twice. So
one of my favorite answers that he gave It was a while ago when he had threw interception. Like, what'd you tell the play? I know you know what I'm talking about. He's like, as I threw to the team. It's one of those things where he can just internalize and move on from things so quickly and see it in a logical way so that it doesn't affect his mental side of the game.
I saw this article, I think it was from CBS. It was before the Colts game, and somebody talked to Peyton Manning about Bo and Anthony Richardson, and it was mainly focused on Richardson. And Manning talked about all the mistakes he made his rookie year. And obviously he has the rookie interception record that still stands.
He's proud of that, actually.
I don't think he's proud of that. He does not want to have it anymore. But he said one of it was kind of eerie in retrospect. He was like, my mindset after throwing my third pick was to not go throw the fourth one. And he was talking about Richardson because Richardson's obviously had some turnover issues. But it was just kind of maybe fitting that he said that right before the Broncos-Colts game, where Bo Nix has 3 interceptions and then found a way to not go throw the fourth one and found a way to throw 2 touchdown passes. The first one was much needed, the go-ahead score to Nate Adkins, but then the one to Cortland Sutton, Cortland's wide open, sure, but like he made the read, put the game out of reach, had 116 quarterback rating in the fourth quarter. He found a way to move on, and that's going to be really important, I think, down the stretch in these final 3 games here. I think speaking specifically to the Chargers, this is a team that plays really good defense. Their edge rushers are dangerous in Bosa and Mack, and they are going to pressure you. They're going to give you different looks. You've got a lot of different packages you got to deal with. But I think I'll be interested to see like what we saw in the fourth quarter of that Chargers game in Denver. Was that something Bo can build on, or was that kind of like empty yardage, empty calories because it was garbage time and the Broncos were trailing 23-0? One thing that I think cannot happen in this game, and obviously the Chargers don't have J.K. Dobbins because he's on IR. Herbert's a little bit banged up. Like this offense, I think Quentin Johnston was estimated as a non-participant on Monday's injury report. We haven't seen Tuesday's yet, so I don't know if he's in danger of not playing. But you cannot let the Chargers kind of do this, follow the same script that they followed last time, which was get a 2-score lead. Now they can run the football, they can play good defense, force you to chase points, force you to get out of your own game. I think Sean Payton talks a lot about Thursday Night Football. Whoever has a halftime lead normally has a higher conversion rate on those than a regular game. And so can the Broncos stay in this game? Can they not fall behind? I think it was against the Chargers last time. Bo was intercepted on the first possession of the game. I think it went off Mims's hands, or maybe it was Lil Jordan. I can't remember whose hands it went off, but it was picked off. Chargers go down. I think they just scored a field goal on that drive, so you didn't fall behind 7-0, but still, like, you're putting yourself in a tough spot to begin the game. And so the first quarter of this game, I feel like the Broncos really have to feel out the Chargers defense, even if you're playing the field position game like you did against the Chargers, against the Colts. Like, your special teams has been so good and your defense has been good. If you need to punt the ball down there and flip the field and let Marvin Mims do his thing and give your offense a chance to get the ball at the 40 or the 50, like this feels like a game where they're two very similar teams because they both like to run the ball. We talked about it earlier. They're just similar in how they want to win football games most of the time.
Yeah.
But the Broncos offense and Bo, I think, has to avoid mistakes, convert on third down. The Chargers were 0-5 on third down themselves against Tampa, and you mentioned their struggles. It was 17-10 or 20.
They were up one, I think, at halftime.
17-13 Chargers at halftime.
Yep.
And then it finished 40-17. Yeah. Chargers did not score again. The Bucs scored 23 in the second half. So, but if you get down 10-0 or 14-0, any team is going to struggle in that situation, and especially when you're on the road and you force a rookie quarterback to become one-dimensional and have to drop back, it becomes more difficult. So the keys for me in this game are, again, can Bo avoid those turnovers? Can he avoid the sacks? And we took one against the Colts. But the Chargers' pass rush is better. And, can he convert on third downs and keep those drives alive? He's been good at that this year. We saw a stretch where the Broncos' third down percentage was really good. He was finding Cortland Sutton at a really high rate. Was it the Browns game that he had? He was just terrific on third down plays. I think he converted like 5 different third downs to Sutton in particular. And if they can do that, they're going to have a good chance offensively to stay in this game. I do think, and I don't know what you guys think about this, it feels to me more like a 24-20 or like mid-20, low 20s type game just because of these defenses than like scoring 40 or 35. So every possession is going to matter. Every turnover and mistake is going to matter. The ability to get long field goals might matter. Like converting in the red zone. Can you be 3 of 4 in the red zone instead of 2 of 4? That could play the difference. Like this feels to me like a margins game where you've got to take advantage of your opportunities and make sure that the other team doesn't.
Yeah, just looking at some of the stats from the last time that the Broncos played the Chargers. Obviously, that game was here in Denver. The third down efficiency from the Chargers, they were 11 of 18. The Broncos were 3 for 11. There's 2 turnovers by the Broncos. One was a fumble, and then obviously the interception. And J.K. Dobbins mentioned he had he had the touchdown in that game. He only rushed for 96 yards. And the receiving yards, Bailey had 78. And so you kind of see, I mean, it was early on in the season when they played each other. And I feel like the Broncos have definitely trended upwards since that game and have definitely gotten better since that game. But there are, again, things that you want to make sure, even total yards, 350 for the Chargers, 316 for the Broncos, and just kind of understanding, like, I mean, they sacked Justin Herbert 3 times, and Bo was sacked twice in that game.
And the score was what, 23-16?
23-16, yeah.
And it was at halftime, it was like 16-0 or 13-0?
At halftime, it was 20-0.
20-0.
Mm-hmm. And then the Broncos scored 16 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. And so some of those yards, I mean, they were playing like a prevent defense maybe on the last drive. And the Broncos still made some good plays, and Bo Nix found a way to convert some third downs in the fourth quarter. I would say the big thing from that game is that in the second half, the Broncos were able to get to Justin Herbert. Mm-hmm. They were able to stop the running game a little bit more than they were in the first half, and they held them to 3 points after halftime. And so, again, the same way that, can this offense build on that and be a little bit better? Can this defense start fast, not give up those? Somebody was asked about it in the locker room. I don't know if it was Jonathan Cooper or who it was, but they were asked about,
said Taylor.
I just paused. But he was asked about, hey, why are there these first 2 drives? It might have been PJ Locke, actually. It was somebody. It was PJ Locke. He was asked about, like, why are these initial drives happening? And he was like, we just got to come out and start faster and be more locked in and ready to go. Because if you get to halftime and it's a 1-score game or you're leading, there's obviously a much higher chance of winning than if you are going in trailing 20-0. Like that puts you in a really tough spot, even though the Broncos were almost able to do it. And I think it came down to an onside kick there at the end. Defensively, got to find a way to pressure Herbert, right? I mentioned the Chargers' weapons. They're limited to some degree. Will Dissly has an injury, their tight end, who hurt the Broncos in week 6. He's been injured. I don't think he's likely to play. And so can you stop the run game and then, again, put the Chargers in these longer third downs, which there weren't a ton of last time around, and get to Herbert? That's what they did in the second half that made things work. And you've got to force turnovers. That was one of very few games this year where the Broncos did not get a takeaway. And as we know, the Broncos are 9-1 when they force a takeaway. So I think you got to find a way defensively. And they've been on a hot streak, right, with Cleveland and Indianapolis. But you've got to find a way to take the ball away from Herbert or whoever it is to give your offense a chance to build a lead. And, if you can do that and make – same way, like the Broncos don't want to get out of their game plan. Chargers don't want to get out of their game plan either. They want to be able to run the football and have these short third downs. That's the other thing is, like, both of these teams, the Chargers had those better third down numbers. The Broncos, when you're in 3rd and long and you can't run the football, then you end up in 3rd and long, it becomes more difficult. And so
I feel like they don't want to wait for those second half adjustments. They've been really good at making them. Obviously, we saw that in the Colts game in particular when the second half they basically shut down Anthony Richardson. But you can tell that this team understands, like, we've gotten away with it a little bit, being able to adjust in the second half. And I know that there are those games that you really, stuff just gets out of control in the first half. You're able to adjust. But I feel like they just don't want to wait for those second half adjustments. They need to start fast, especially when you're going against the Chargers, because they can hurt you in all kind of ways. So what are your final thoughts, Suze, as we get ready for our primetime game On Thursday Night Football, again, this is a game that you said the Broncos wanted. Do you have any final thoughts, Suze?
Suze can go first.
Suze can go first.
Yeah,
Suze,
no,
what
I
you
mean,
got?
I agree with what you're saying. I think, it's good that they've been able to make those second half adjustments, but you don't want to be in a position where you're having that sigh of relief, like, okay, we found a way to get it done. Like, you want to take control from the beginning of the game. I mean, they've talked about starting faster throughout the season, so I think that'll be key. And I think over the course of the next 3 games, like, they've talked about not wanting to feel like they're sneaking into the playoffs and nobody's mindset is there. And I think when you're facing 3 really good teams, and obviously we talked about how the Bengals record doesn't show that, but they are a good team.
Yeah.
I think if anything, like, mentally, to get a couple of wins in these last 3 games would put them in a good spot, ahead of a playoff push.
Is there any particular player you're looking at on the Broncos that we do a segment called Call Game on Broncos Weekend, but is there a player that you have in your mind that you think would call game?
Well, I think the one thing we haven't talked about is that one of the
Let's
reasons
talk about it then.
we're going to, I think, unless like the power goes out suddenly, is that the Broncos didn't have Pat Surtain the last time they played this football game against the Chargers, right? He got hurt on the very first drive of the game, and Vance Joseph said afterwards there was a degree of figuring out kind of, how do we handle this in game? Right. When you go into a week knowing you're not going to have somebody, it's a little bit easier. And we saw the Broncos, they then went into the game against the Saints without Pat. They found a way to do it. Pat was a full participant on Monday's estimated report, which is a good sign for him playing this week. I think having him out there, whether you decide to put him on Quentin Johnston if he plays, whether you decide to put him on Ladd McConkey, who's been perhaps the best rookie receiver, most productive rookie receiver, and has a really good connection with Justin Herbert, or if you just keep him where he is and you shut down a whole half of the field, that to me is really encouraging because you basically played the last game without your best defensive player. And Nick Bonito, I know, would now like a word based on all the plays he's making about potentially being in that conversation. But to have Surtain, if he indeed does play, which it looks like he's on track to, that would be a really big deal, I think, because he just elevates everybody all around him. And then, we'll see what happens with Riley Moss based on his status. Yeah. He was listed as a DNP on Monday. We'll see. He was doing some work pregame, but we'll see if he's ready to go. But if not, I think you've got to be really encouraged about how Chris Abrams-Drain played against Indianapolis, how Damari Mathis bounced back after kind of a tough couple of first years to his career. And so I think you feel better about that group being able to limit Herbert and the Chargers. And then I think, you gotta play your game, stay in like your style of game, right? Because if you fall behind and you're chasing, I think it becomes more difficult. And then the other thing is that, and they talked about it kind of going in that New Orleans game, Thursday Night Football is a mindset game. The Broncos have a chance to clinch a playoff berth. How bad do they want to go do it this week? The Chargers are now in a spot where they just lost by 23 points at home. They're probably, Derwin James was saying, I think that they're fired up. They're ready to go. They're going to be angry and ready to respond. And so which team wants this more? And which team, if they get punched in the mouth early, is going to respond? Like if you go out there and you score early against the Chargers and you get a stop, and like if the Broncos go up 10-0, are the Chargers going to be ready to fight back? Right. If the Broncos go down 10-0, we know they are based on what we've seen, right? But that's part of it too, that I think any Thursday night football game, there is this mentality. Are the Broncos thinking, oh, we got 3 chances to get this win? We're not, let's just get through this game. If you do that, the Chargers are going to find a way to beat you. Yeah. If you go in ready to go and say, hey, this is the only chance we have, and you have that desperation and you play with that mentality, I like the Broncos' chances. Yeah, we saw that a little bit with the Colts when they came out, and Nick Bonito said, look, we knew that they're going to come on and give us their best 15 plays, and we have to find a way to make sure to disrupt that flow so that they don't get into a rhythm and they don't get into a huge momentum shift going to their side. So I think that's a good point on prime time. And Suze, I know you're excited for prime time. Yeah, always. Can't wait. You are excited? Just as hyped as Suze sounded right there. Fired up. Wow, I don't have that. You must not have had your coffee yet. I used it all up earlier. All right, well, that'll do it for this edition of Altitude Advantage. Again, I am your team reporter and host, Elisa Hernandez. We have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla, across from me, a.k.a. The Machine,
I think that nickname stands on its own. And we have our digital media contributor, Susanna Ware, as well as our fact checker and Aric lie detector. So thank you so much. Make sure you guys comment, leave all your questions there, and we cannot wait for this primetime game, and we will see you next time.